The show is proudly brought to you by Altex East Africa. Now, if you are an ardent viewer of this show and you have not checked out Altex, you're definitely doing yourself a great disservice. Altex East Africa, now under their Zabu initiative, can get you access to different financial instruments, but particularly the treasury bonds market here in East Africa. We're talking about getting to buy and sell these instruments now by dialing *292#. You can be able to learn more, choose the best interest, look at also the different maturity periods for the bonds, and get to choose what you want actually to buy or sell. You can transfer money off of your mobile money by using your PIN, and definitely the transaction will be made starting with as little as 15,000 shillings. The markets at Altex open at 8 a.m. and they close at 3 p.m. Altex East Africa doing something new. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the stock market performances here at the Uganda Stock Exchange. Now, yesterday, of course, being the fourth day of trading, we did have several counters participating in the trading, but mainly when you look at the participants, we did have local stocks coming into the picture here. And when you look at the domestically listed stocks, they did have great movements on the market. But on the other hand, we did have the top gainers, mainly cross listings from the Nairobi Securities Exchange. And looking at the top gainers here, we had 5 of them and just one bottom loser. Of course, that influenced the all-share index very much positively, moving upwards in terms of looking at the aggregate performance of all the listed stocks on the market. Equity Bank Limited was the top gainer here for the day, and gained by exactly 3.84% on the stock price there, and closing the day with a price of 1,457.43 Ugandan shillings. That notwithstanding, Nation Media Group as well did appreciate a 3.37% margin at exactly 470.28 Ugandan shillings closing price. Nation Media Group is trying to struggle and get back to the 500 shillings mark where it started the year 2022, but we hope definitely the efforts will not be in vain. Currently at 470.28, they need about 30 Ugandan shillings on their stock price, or a little bit less than that, to get to the 500 shillings mark. You know, as we close the year-to-date performance really comes into picture. You want to end the year strong, or you want to end the year weak, so you can start next year very strong. So definitely every company would love that for their stock price, and every shareholder definitely looks at getting that value as the year gets to be wound up. Now, Centum Investments was also another top gainer at exactly 1.31% gain, and closing the day with 244.61 Ugandan shillings. Centum has been one of the biggest losers of this year, beginning there with a stock price of over 444 shillings, currently at 244, wiping away almost a half of their stock value this year. So it's also one of the companies that's being looked at very closely as being in the struggle to see that they can start next year pretty much stronger than they did close this year. Kenya Airways as well gained a 0.07%, though of course this was a quite small margin, and closing the day with still 115.09 Ugandan shillings per share on their share price there. East African Breweries Limited, making 100 years this year, also getting some value on their stocks on Thursday trading at a 0.07% gain. They closed the day with a price of 4,980.79 Ugandan shillings. On the losing side, however, we did have Jubilee Holdings performing quite not so well, not as expected. Of course, right now still below 6,000 shillings and below 10,000, which is the price they began with this year. The company yesterday continued to lose about 5.69% of their trading price and closed at exactly 5,664.43 Ugandan shillings there on the stock market. Remember, Jubilee Holdings is an insurance company, of course, with a subsidiary here in Uganda, but basically founded in Kenya. So the insurance, of course, companies that are listed on the stock exchange this year definitely have gone through a very, very challenging time. Looking at, for example, National Insurance Corporation this year, it actually, instead of issuing a dividend, did issue a bonus issue or a rights issue where we saw several shareholders get extra shares on them, and that this definitely got to increase the value of the stakeholders in the company, but also with the promise probably next year of being able to issue dividends. Now, when you look at the bottom loser here, we just had one bottom loser and 5 gainers. Of course, this, like I said, influenced the increase in the value of the all-share index. For starters, the all-share index is an aggregate performance tracker. When you look at the exchange and you want to just get to know how the overall performance was, definitely the all-share index is the way to go. Now, this index moved up 9.96 points. This was a 0.82% increase in the value of the index, closing at exactly 1,222.90. Now, when you look at the 1 week performance, exactly 1 week now, the index is counting gains of 1.79%, which is a very good picture here. Of course, getting into the season of Christmas, we definitely want more gains on our index. A 4-week gain currently of 0.46% has also been registered. But remember also, this influence is mainly from the cross-listed stocks who are coming in the top positions, but these are not participants as well. So there is still, of course, need for us to seek guidance of the local company index where we have more activity. And when you look at the local company index, it is still quite stagnant in movement, not moving backwards or forwards. And yesterday it maintained its value at exactly 272.47 points. And that was closing yesterday's trades. Now we are counting a 1 week gain, however, on the local company index at a 1.45% gain and a 4-week gain of 1.41%. This, among other things, could be attributed to the gain of Stanbic Bank. Stanbic Bank was able to appreciate from 21 shillings to 23 shillings. A quite small margin, but definitely with great influence there, because Stanbic Bank Uganda is currently the #1 most traded on stock on the Uganda Stock Exchange in the past 3 months. So that is still influencing the trading on the local companies, and this is also being tracked by the local company index as a gain. Now, looking at the top movers, of course, we did have 3 participants, and these are domestically listed equities. This time around, Bank of Baroda Uganda came on top of the big movers there on the market. Now, Bank of Baroda yesterday recorded a total volume of 18,400 shares on the stock exchange, and being a top mover, did not have any movement in the price. The price is still currently maintained at 85.0 Ugandan shillings. Now, looking at the other gainer here, rather the top mover here, also Cipla Quality Chemical Industries has registered recent activity, and we're seeing that yesterday closed at exactly 15,900 shares being traded at Cipla Quality Chemical Industries. Remember, this is also the only pharmaceutical that is currently listed. We are having prospects of new pharmaceutical industries being set up here in Uganda, and are definitely becoming very great idols of pharmaceutical sciences here in Africa. But Cipla so far right now, as we speak, is leading in terms of production of drugs. They do have antiretroviral drugs that they are producing, anti-malarial, and then currently they are also embarking on a project to construct another site where they're going to be able to produce anti-cancer drugs which is definitely going to be of great impact on the company's revenue. Most recently, the company has registered a little bit more activity, and of course, as we wind up there, definitely they are still going strong. Cipla Quality Chemicals was followed by MTN in terms of volume, and MTN had just about 8,690 shares that were traded on the stock exchange via this company. MTN Uganda is still currently the youngest stock to be listed on the stock exchange, being able to make just a few days ago on the 6th of December. There was, of course, rumor, rather, it wasn't actually rumor, it was public knowledge that Airtel Uganda was also going to join MTN as a second telecommunications company on the stock exchange. Unfortunately, that could not happen. Of course, based on the reasons given by Airtel Uganda, they say that the current market conditions might not favor an initial public offer, which was of course taken up by UCC, and they were granted another year at least to prepare and see that the exchange and the entire market conditions can be favorable and return, of course, from the COVID-19 pandemic recovery, the shocks, and of course from the global supply chain disruptions and so many other things that currently have been bombarding the markets here in Uganda. Now, when you look at Bank of Baroda Uganda, it was coming, remember, in the first place a few months ago, a couple of weeks actually, not months necessarily, but currently, given this volume, could it be getting back in the game? Now let's have a look at that. Now, Bank of Baroda Uganda is currently still the 12th most valuable company. When you look at its market capitalization, which is over 213 billion Ugandan shillings, currently this represents a 0.999%, almost close to 1% of the equities market on the Uganda Stock Exchange. Bank of Baroda closed yesterday with a price of 85.00 Ugandan shillings. Just taking a look a little bit back to the stock of Bank of Baroda. Bank of Baroda began the year with a price of 90 shillings, and when you 95.5 Ugandan shillings to be very specific. When you look at a calculation on their year to date, they have lost 11% of their stock price. But currently, they are still one of the most traded on stocks and one of the most stable stocks on the Uganda Stock Exchange. The company this year was able to also issue a dividend after the Bank of Uganda released a ban on all financial institutions from issuing dividends due to, of course, capital recovery measures to see that different banks and financial institutions could be able to pass through the period of COVID-19 recovery and also the other different global shocks that were currently being faced by these financial institutions. Now, the company within the last 3 months is the 4th most traded on, coming behind Stanbic Bank, Umeme, and MTN Uganda. Given, of course, the data from the Uganda Stock Exchange in the last 3 months, the Bank of Baroda counter has traded close to 4.36 million shares on the stock exchange. Currently, this was also valued at 370 million Ugandan shillings. So basically, if you're a trader and you're looking to be trading around these volumes, and on average, probably they have about 69,000 shares that are traded on this particular counter. So if you're a trader looking around these figures, if you can afford the 85.0 and you also are looking forward to a good dividend policy company, definitely Bank of Baroda Uganda could be an option to consider. For Cipla Quality Chemical Industries, their closing price was 60.0 Ugandan shillings. Well, when you look at Cipla's value this year, they have lost some value, of course, on their year to date. They have also lost some value in terms of their last 4 weeks of trading and in the last 3 months. Basically, it hasn't been a very good year for the Cipla Quality Chemical Industries stock prices here. Looking at their year to date, for example, they started the year at 92.0 Ugandan shillings, meaning they have lost about 34%, currently at 60.0 Ugandan shillings. And when you look at also their monthly performance, in the last 4 weeks in November, they have lost 8% of their value. So that definitely should be a worry for the shareholders. However, what should really bring back your hope in Cipla is the fact that they are still the 6th most traded on stock on the Uganda Stock Exchange. And looking in the last 3 months, they have traded over 510,707 shares on the Uganda Stock Exchange, and they are still doing more, especially now currently looking at their intensified activity that we are witnessing on the stock exchange. A volume high of just about 293,700 shares was achieved on the 11th of November 2022 within this same period. And when you look at their recent market activity, yesterday having a 15,000 shares volume, on the 12th of December they had about 2,000, and then on the 9th of December they did have about 76,800 shares, meaning that they are returning to more intensified activity as we wind up the year. They did make their first profit since listing in the year 2018 this year, and that was a big move there from their CEO, Mr. Ajay Kumar, who is currently the CEO of Cipla Quality Chemical Industries. They did have a very good dividend being issued out for the very first time this year. So you can look forward to more next year, and definitely it would be one of the companies I would consider for dividend gains next year. I would bet on this one, definitely. Cipla will make it. Now, getting to look at MTN Uganda as we wind up the Ugandan market, the company currently has a stock value of 180.0 Ugandan shillings per share. Now, this brings their market capitalization to over 4.03 trillion rather on the Uganda Stock Exchange. In the last 3 months, they have been also a very good company to trade on, and they are currently the 3rd most traded on in that particular period. They have traded over 7.51 million shares and a total value of over 1.38 billion Ugandan shillings on the stock exchange. Currently, their year-to-date performance is still lacking, of course, at 194.99 Ugandan shillings opening price this year. They are currently suffering a loss of 7.69% on their year-to-date performance. However, this is, of course, being ranked as the 6th on the year-to-date performance counter, so which is not a very bad position for them, but they can definitely do better. For the shareholders who bought shares at MTN in the initial public offer, definitely things are not yet going well. Of course, the shares were bought at 200 shillings, and currently they are counting losses of over 20 shillings, and they have not managed to recover that in this year. So, is next year going to be a good year for MTN? Definitely, of course, with their new CEO, Miss Molinge, who is who came from Safaricom. They definitely looking at strategies to make the company more profitable, get to increase the revenue, and definitely get to make better profits. And remember, better profits, the better for the shareholders and the better for everyone in the business. Now, that's it, of course, from the Uganda Stock Exchange. But in summary, we had just about 4 million shillings worth of turnover on the market yesterday, and a total of just about 42,990.0 shares that were traded on the stock exchange. Now, the data, however, shows that we did have a 28% decline in the volumes or in the shares that were traded, and a 34% decline in the turnover on the Uganda Stock Exchange. However, currently the market capitalization of the Uganda Stock Exchange has appreciated to 21.3 trillion Ugandan shillings. That's, of course, it from the Uganda Stock Exchange. You can buy shares on the Uganda Stock Exchange through the licensed stockbrokers. Visit www.capitalmarketsauthority.com to find out more about those entities. Now let's get to crossover to Nairobi Stock Exchange here. Nairobi seemed also to have a very good day, though of course with a few hiccups there here and there. Now in total we had 45 companies participating in trading, and 26 gainers and 12 losers for the day. This of course ended with the Nairobi Stock Exchange All Share Index gaining about 0.24, a little bit more than the day before, and a 0.19% value gain on their index. Currently, the 26 top companies were led by Liberty Kenya Holdings, who appreciated 9.98% on their stock price. Also, Uchumi has recently registered a very wonderful performance. Of course, around this time, companies like Uchumi are making lots of money, so definitely there would be something to consider. But like I said, small caps, very high volatility in the market. So you expect Uchumi up today, and in the next few hours it will be down, because that is it from the small stocks. That is what you should expect. They are quite volatile. Looking at also Sanlam Kenya, Sanlam did gain a 7.47% on their stock price, and Kenya Reinsurance Corporation at a 6.78% gain as well there. However, unfortunately, on the losing side, HF Group came out last with an end of day price depreciation of 5.35%, and this was closing at exactly 3.01 Kenyan shillings per share. And when you look at Wumeme, also declined 5.12%. I don't know if this was because of the news that Wumeme will be exiting Uganda, but definitely this was the performance from the Uganda Wumeme stock that is currently also cross-listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. TransCentury also lost 4.71%, as well as Home Africa, who lost a 2.94%. That is off their trading price at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. There were little surprises from the top movers, as Equity Group Holdings overtook Safaricom this time round. Equity Group Holdings had about 3.53 million traded shares on the stock market, and Safaricom had a 2.93 million shares that was traded on the stock exchange. Currently, those are some of the companies that are influencing growth there on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. But basically, looking at the indexes, of course, indexes here are very, very crucial when it comes to the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Remember, we do have when you look at probably some of the indexes, we do have exchange traded funds, and these exchange traded funds, or ETFs, definitely get you to invest in the different companies at the same time. Now that curve there is of the Nairobi Stock Exchange All Share Index, and when you look at their index here currently on their year to date, they have lost 23.06%. That's evident from the curve. In the month of January, we were above, almost above 150 points, close to 160. Currently, we are at exactly 128 points, which is a great decline from the Nairobi Stock Exchange. The 1 week currently, they're still gaining about 1.58% due to the recent good performance, and in 4 weeks they have lost about 0.73%. Also, other remarkable indices that did perform well were the NSE 20 and the NSE 25, with the NSE 20 tracking the top 20 companies of the Nairobi Stock Exchange via market capitalization. This counter gained 0.73%, and the NSE 25 gained a 0.29%. That's it, ladies and gentlemen, that we had for you today. Remember to follow us on Twitter at Smart24 TV. The hashtag is also financial markets, and get to involve me as well in your Twitter at Anthony Sebale. The show is proudly brought to you by Altex East Africa, your #1 private stock Stock Exchange. It is a Friday, and definitely I will be catching you next week on Monday for, of course, latest updates from the Friday tradings. Friday tradings are happening right now, not only on the Uganda Stock Exchange, but on the Nairobi Stock Exchange and across the world. Remember, financial markets are here to redeem you from poverty by making use of your savings. Make use of those savings and get them invested via Altex East Africa. My name is Anthony Sebale. Catch you next week. Bye for now.